Today, we are going to be talking about understanding an input-output machine. This is from Unit 1, Lesson 1 in our text. Let's get into it. First off, you might be wondering exactly what is an input-output machine. Well, in this case, it's a mathematical concept used to describe a process that takes an input value, applies a specific rule or operation, and produces an output value. Let me take you through a few examples. The pattern rule is to relate the input to the output. In this case, the pattern rule would be to multiply the input by 5. If the input is 1, when I multiply that by 5, my output would become 5. If the input is 2, and I multiply that input by 5, the output would be 10. If the input is 3, when I multiply that by 5, my output will be 15. Here's another example. The pattern rule that they are following here is to add 8. I'll also point out a few other things because there are 2 more rules that we need to talk about. The pattern rule that relates input to output is to add 8. But the pattern rule with just looking at the input is that it starts at 1 and increases by 1 each time. The output pattern rule is that it starts at 9 and increases by 1 each time. Here's another example. And in this example, there are 2 operations performed. The pattern rule to relate the input to the output is you multiply by 2 and then add 6. You need to do those operations in order, and you must do both of them. The pattern rule for the input in this case is to start at the number 2 and increase by 2 each time. The pattern rule for the output is to start at the number 10 and increase by 4 each time. And let's take the first one. So if the input is 2, what I would need to do to find the output would be to multiply that 2 by 2. 2 times 2 is 4, and then add 6. 4 plus 6 is 10. So 10 is the output. Here's another example. In this one, the pattern rule that relates the input to the output is to multiply by 9. There's only one operation in this case. For the pattern rule, just looking at the input, it is to start at the number 1 and increase by 1 each time. The output pattern rule is to start at the number 9 and increase by 9 each time. And if I look at it and I take my very first input number, which is the number 1, if I multiply that by 9, my output is 9. If my input is 2, when I multiply that input by 9, the output will be 18. All right, here are some practice questions. Get ready. All right. I'm going to explain this question first, and then I encourage you to pause the video and try it out on your own. Here, I give you what the input is. I show you what the input-output machine is, and that, of course, is the pattern rule relating the input to the output. But I haven't filled in the output column. That will be your job. As well, I want you to record what is the pattern rule relating the input to the output. Tell me what the input pattern rule is, and finally, what the output pattern rule is. You can pause the video now, and when you think you have your answer, you can come back to check it. Okay, welcome back. Here are the answers for this question. The output table will be 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. But it's really important to think about those rules. What was happening the pattern rule to relate the input to output was starting at the number 1, the input, to add 12, and that found an output of 13. The pattern rule for the input was to start at 1 and increase by 1. The pattern rule for the output was to start at the number 13 and increase by 1. Knowing those pattern rules and being comfortable identifying them will help you as we progress through this chapter. All right, here's your next question. Here, I give you what the input-output machine operations are, and I provide the input. Take the time now to pause the video and fill in the output table and what the pattern rules are to relate the input to output, the input, and the output. And on pause when you're ready to come back to check your answer. All right, welcome back. Here are your answers. I hope you all had success in finding out that the output column should be 13, 25, 37, 49, and 61. Remember, you started with an input of 2. When that input is put into the input-output machine, the first operation you needed to do was to multiply by 6. 2 times 6 is 12. And then the next operation you were to do was to add 1. 12 plus 1 equals 13, and 13 is the output. So the pattern rule here to relating the input to output was to first multiply the input by 6 and then add 1 to get the output. The input rule was that it starts at 2 and increases by 2 each time. The output rule is that it starts at the number 13 and increases by 12 each time. Okay, if you had it, congratulations, great job. If not, that's okay, we're still learning. Here's another question for you to try out. Here, I give you an input-output value table. Only the input column is filled in. I do let you know that the pattern rule to relate the input to output is to divide by 6. You need to fill in the output column and also let me know what the pattern rule is for the input and what the pattern rule is for the output. Pause the video now and give it a try. Rejoin when you have your answer. All right, here we go. I hope you are having success with these. So here in the answers, you can see that we started with an input of 36, and my pattern rule was to divide by 6. So the output was 6. 36 divided by 6 is 6. And the rest of the outputs, you can see increase by 1 each time, which is the output pattern rule. It's to start at the number 6 and increase by 1 each time. For the input pattern rule, it starts at the number 36 and increases by 6 each time. And that is key to note because you'll notice our pattern rule to relate the input to output was that we divided by 6. Often, the pattern rules for the input and output give you clues to help you determine what the pattern rule for relating the input to the output would be. And sometimes you're going to have to find those. Okay, here is another example. In this one, once again, you are given all of the inputs. It starts at the number 30. You are also told what the pattern rule for relating the input to the output is. You need to divide by 3 and then subtract 2. Once you have the output column filled in, make sure to record what the input pattern rule is and what the output pattern rule is. Pause the video now and give it a try. All right, welcome back. Here we have our answers. Our output column should be 8, 18, 28, 38, and 48. For the pattern rules for the input, it is start at the number 30 and increase by 30 each time. The output pattern rule is to start at the number 8 and increase by 10 each time. If you had it, great job. If any of these were challenging and difficult, feel free to rewatch the video and try them again. But that's all for now. Till next time.